African continent that has resulted in environmental degradation, labor exploitation, corruption, and other human rights abuses, and has rarely led to actual prosperity for local communities. There are many drivers of exploitation in the sector, whether that be poor governance that allows corruption to fester, weak judicial institutions that foster a culture of an impunity, lack of economic opportunity for marginalized communities, and so on. These conditions create an environment that's ripe for exploitation by domestic and foreign companies alike. They can act with impunity to cut costs by not adhering to environmental, social, and governance standards due to local corruption eating into their profits. That means poverty wages. That means unsafe and deadly working conditions. That means contaminated water in local communities, and ultimately it means putting short-term gains ahead of the long-term development, stability, and success of the African continent. There is no question that Chinese-owned and operated companies are dominating and engaging in exploitative practices in the mining sector in certain African countries. Many of these companies frankly don't care about the corruption and are not as concerned by the blow to their reputation. For example, just this month, the Kafua River in Zambia was declared dead after a Chinese-owned copper mine contaminated the river. In response, the Zambian government fined this company a measly $10,000. This impunity exists all over the continent. We have also seen other foreign companies operate in the sector and be accused of corruption and human rights abuses. For example, Glencore, a Swiss company, pled guilty in the United States to bribing officials in Nigeria, Cameroon, Ivory Coast, Equatorial Guinea, and the DRC, and ultimately agreed to pay the DRC $180 million in a settlement deal. Last year, the Biden administration sanctioned a UAE-based gold company for purchasing gold from the Rapid Support Forces in Sudan, ultimately fueling the war and the RSF's genocide. And famously, Israeli businessman Dan Gertler was exposed and subsequently sanctioned for hundreds of millions of dollars worth of opaque and corrupt mining and oil deals in the DRC. We will continue to see these practices until we address what is actually fueling exploitation in the first place. Meanwhile, the United States has long attempted to increase U.S. investment in Africa's mining sector as a means to secure our supply chain and compete with China. But these investments won't come to fruition and won't be advantageous or strategic in the long term if they do not meet high environmental, social, and governance standards to ensure our investments are bringing benefits rather than more exploitation. To do this, the U.S. government and U.S. companies need to consult with local communities on new investments to obtain their consent and assess the impacts project is having on local populations. If we don't do this, U.S. companies will be on the wrong end of protests and public scrutiny experienced by Chinese-owned and operated companies. And that's why I was so disappointed that the Trump administration recently moved to pause the enforcement of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which is a law that prohibits the bribery of foreign officials to obtain a business advantage and requires transparency for companies. This is the exact kind of law we need to make sure our investments are good. So I urge the Trump administration to reinstate the enforcement of this law immediately. I also continue to be alarmed by the devastating impact of President Trump's foreign aid freeze, including on U.S. efforts to address exploitation in the mining sector. The Trump administration has terminated programs that were improving accountability in DRC's mining sector, working to prevent mining-related violence through dialogue, and enhancing transparency and addressing corruption in the extractive sector. If we are serious about addressing exploitation in the mining sector and bringing mutual benefits to both Africans and Americans, then we need to bring all of our tools to the table. So I look forward to hearing more from our panelists about what is driving exploitation and how we should address it. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, sir. I would like to, before recognizing our distinguished panel, recognize a former member of Congress, and a very distinguished one at that, who has been very active on all of these issues, Mark Walker. Thank you, Mark, for being here and for bringing three Congolese Americans with you who are extremely interested: Adrienne Moros, Elaine Buka, and Wilson Tate. Thank you, Mark, again for meetings we've had recently as well as in the past on all of these relevant issues. You are tremendous. Thank you. I'd like to now introduce our distinguished panel, beginning first with Mr. Sasha Lesnev, who is a senior policy advisor at the Century, an investigative and policy organization that seeks to disrupt predatory networks that benefit from conflict, repression, and kleptocracy in Africa and beyond. Sasha has spent the past 25 years working on human rights conflict, corruption, and U.S. policy in Africa. He has worked with the Enough Project, and we were just reminiscing about some of the past fights about Darfur and other issues, and he's been here before as a very prized witness, and I thank him, and also he's worked with the U.S. Institute of Peace. We'll then hear from Thierry Dangala, and welcome back. Thierry used to sit here as a member of this subcommittee staff and did a tremendous job at that. He is the founder of Accountable Africa, which conducts supply chain investigations for gold and precious metal traders and provides due diligence reporting for investors in Africa. Previously, he worked, as I said, on this committee as a very distinguished member of the staff, and we do prize his insights. And in meetings prior to this, he had a lot of good information for the committee about this, which helped us frame this hearing. And so I want to thank you for that. We'll then hear from Mr. Joseph Mulala Nurgamo,
Yes, sir.
Thank you, is a non-resident fellow with the Freedom and Prosperity Center and in the Geostrategy Initiative in the Atlantic Council Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security. He was born and spent his formative years in the Democratic Republic of Congo. He was the first and thus far only, I believe, Congolese graduate from the United States Military Academy. What a great accomplishment that is, at West Point, where he majored in defense and strategic studies. And then we'll be hearing from Mr. Obert Abor, who is a Zimbabwean lawyer coming in from Zimbabwe, and I thank you for being on the line here, and legal researcher. He works on international trade and Chinese investments in Africa, natural resource governance, and climate government issues. Previously, Obert coordinated the alignment of Zimbabwe laws with the 2013 Constitution and served as a researcher clerk for the Chief Justice of Namibia, where he provided research support to judges in drafting of court judgments. Thank you. I will now yield to Sasha for such time as he may consume.
Thank you so much, Chairman Smith, Ranking Member Jacobs, and distinguished members of this subcommittee. You all are real champions for human rights, and I greatly appreciate that. I have personally witnessed the horrors of child soldiers and child miners as young as 8 years old in mines in the Democratic Republic of Congo, as well as warlords and Chinese and other companies profiting from this exploitation, all in the name of getting us cheaper smartphones and cars. This has got to stop. Africa holds 40% of the world's critical minerals, and China made a strategic decision a decade ago to procure them, spending well over $10 billion acquiring mines. But the investments have come with corruption and human rights abuses. Nowhere has these problems been more acute than the Democratic Republic of Congo, the world's largest producer of cobalt and tantalum and the second largest producer of copper. Corruption has only increased since the China-DRC mega deal worth $6.2 billion in 2008. The DRC's corruption rating is lower today under President Tshisekedi than under his predecessor, Joseph Kabila. My organization, The Century, investigated these deals and found $238 million and then $55 million that went missing. And major Chinese and other mining contracts remain opaque today. Unfortunately, corruption has not been limited to the Chinese. International tycoon Dan Gertler was sanctioned during the first Trump administration after his corrupt mining and oil deals led the DRC to lose $1.3 billion. Human rights is also worsening, with increasing repression and thousands of child miners working at mines that send cobalt mainly to Chinese crude refiners. The president's security force has illegally controlled mines, and thousands of people have been forcibly evicted to make way for Chinese mines in particular. Another mineral, gold, which you highlighted, has also been at the heart of this escalating conflict in eastern Congo, which has displaced 6.5 million people. It's the world's third largest displacement crisis. Gold is a chief source of revenue for armed groups. Backed by Rwanda, M23 has taken over gold mines, and Rwanda's new refinery was sanctioned by the European Union last week after exporting $800 million worth of gold and illegally profiting from conflict gold. This gold is then smuggled to the UAE, China, and other countries. And China has been active in the conflict gold trade, from a $38 million operation where a Chinese company paid armed groups for access to 400 illegal mining operations in South Kivu today that have allegedly smuggled up to 8 tons of gold annually following bribes. And China is purchasing record amounts of gold today, potentially to establish a new BRICS currency that would chip away at the US dollar. This is not a hopeless situation. Leverage exists in these supply chains, and the US government, electronics companies, and banks in particular can make an impact in 3 areas. The biggest obstacle to eliminating mining abuses is the system of kleptocracy in the DRC. This system of state capture allows ruling elites and their commercial partners to personally profit while leaving the population to suffer from poor security, education, and health care. They use violence to maintain power and repress dissent. This system will continue unless there are consequences for that corruption.